We'll move on to the next part of our agenda, the report from the Covington Implementation Committee from Alice Krupel-Comas and Susan Bakewell-Sachs. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Krupel-Comas and Dr. Bakewell-Sachs. Thank you for joining. Good to see you all again.
Thank you, Chair Bonfries and members of the board. For the record, I'm Alice Krupel-Comas, Executive Vice President and General Counsel. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'll let my colleague introduce herself.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Bakewell-Sachs. I serve as Vice President for Nursing Affairs and Dean of the School of Nursing. I use she, her pronouns.
We come before you today to give you our monthly report on the Covington Committee, Implementation Committee's work. In your materials you received, and as was posted on the OHSU website, on the Covington website, our 6-month report. Still not very loud. Our 6-month report, which contained a significant detail on the work of both committees. And to say, I want to thank both the members of the Implementation Committee as well as the Oversight Committee for the work over the last 6 months. It has been both taxing and exciting, I think, to move this work forward. So quickly, our agenda today is before you. We'll talk to you about the SBARs that we have in process. So we've noted that the SBARs are the document we use to propose how we will manage the recommendations of the Covington report, and we work with the Oversight Committee on those. We'll talk about what SBARs remain through our work, the complexity that we've found in the Implementation Committee work, and as well as our collaboration with the Oversight Committee.
This slide provides an overview of the SBARs that are in process. Please note that almost 2/3 of the expected SBARs have been drafted and are moving through the review process. You'll see from reading left to right, we have those listed that are under construction, those that are under review by the Implementation Committee, those that are with the Oversight Committee, either as first or subsequent review. Recall that we have a very strong commitment to bidirectional exchange, and so that list includes those that are under first review as well as subsequent. And then we have several that have been approved, and of course, I'd like to highlight again the hiring of a new EVP and Chief People Officer as something that's completed. In addition to this, you'll, I hope, appreciate that there is a flow to this work, and that having these kinds of graphics help us to track and make sure that we are staying appropriately focused.
As you'll see from this chart, we have made a list of the remaining SBARs that we need to work through to manage each of the recommendations in the Covington report. We made a commitment to the Oversight Committee that we would deliver 4 SBARs per month, and we are working very diligently to meet that commitment. We appreciate their time and effort in reviewing those. As Susan mentioned, we have it's a bidirectional exchange, so oftentimes they are reviewing a set of SBARs for the first time at the same time as giving us feedback for a second set of review. And again, we acknowledge that that's a significant work, but we also know that the process has been deeply enriched by their suggestions. I'll mention again, the Chief People Officer, we not only received lots of feedback from the Oversight Committee about what the position description should look like and what they thought were important requirements for the person filling the position, but they also engaged in the interview process, which was also really important to us to get feedback from as deeply within the community as we could. There will be one final SBAR past these 4 per month, as you see here on the chart. Again, we expect that the work of at least drafting the initial SBARs will be completed in early January, but know that the bidirectional exchange will continue, and also that we've committed to continuous improvement. So some of the work may be reviewed as we move forward, and we might tweak things if they're not working.
Quick question, as we mentioned, the one final SBAR. Is there a way that we can reconcile all the SBARs to recommendations from the Covington?
Absolutely. We're charting that and we're happy to provide it to the board. We have we tagged each one, each SBAR with a particular recommendation that it comes from, and use the language from the report so that the community can understand exactly what we're driving for.
Great, thank you.
As we are continuing our work on the implementation committee, we are recognizing a spectrum of complexity of that work in terms of what full implementation will require. This overview was developed to help us see the span of complexity, identify implementation work associated with each of the SBARs, to also help us anticipate where we might need resources and help us also have a perspective of what the overall picture looks like. Recall that the SBARs define the roles and responsibilities, but implementation or full execution of the SBARs may require additional resources in order to complete the work. As you look left to right on this diagram, we go from less complex to more complex. For example, in the left column, you'll see the things that, for example, that are in green that are in process. I was hoping I was going to be able to read it from here, but I can't. So let me look at what I have printed. For example, clearly define and communicate the roles and responsibilities for the Center for Diversity and Inclusion at OHSU is in the column on the left. In the middle, a more complex challenge to increase the number and diversity of the HR business partners. And on the right, an even more complex issue is developing and communicating a strategic diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging and anti-racism vision for the organization, which has 4 parts to it as we have mapped it thus far. I think you wanted to also say something, Alice.
Before we move on from this slide, I want to note the consolidated data reporting, centralized reporting systems is on the far right. It was one of the things we tackled right out of the box, understanding that the community wanted that information and also a simplification of how they reported. We are noting the complexity of that process in that there were numerous places to report, as you all know, having read the Covington report, but also lots of different reasons why we need to provide that data to the community, both for regulatory reasons. In student affairs, for example, particular sets of data are needed and are reported, and differently for the health system, for example. We're trying to gather all points of data that might be needed and all those, both sources and uses of that data to develop a system that speaks to the whole university and that can provide the reports we need to provide transparency to the community broadly. Just to continue here, as noted, we are continuing to work on both of the less complex and the more complex, understanding again that every single member of both the implementation and oversight committee have full-time other jobs that they're doing, and we really appreciate that. Some of the less complex issues will nonetheless require communication plans. For example, I'll note that the realignment of the AEO and its change of name will require changes to myriad websites and other materials that we provide to the community. We want to make sure that those are crisp and understandable. Generally, people are reaching out to that office in a moment of trauma and distress, and so we want to make sure that that's clear and well aligned. On the more complex issues, we know that there will be continued exchange with the Oversight Committee. We've committed to providing them not just the initial SBAR, but also an implementation plan for them to give us feedback on with respect to both timelines, budget, and work product. And that work is ongoing.
This slide highlights some of the learnings that the implementation committee has identified, especially investments early on that we have learned how valuable and important they are. Co-constructing a thoughtful, collaborative, and trauma-informed process is very, very while an important part of the process. Ensuring that all voices are heard requires a great deal of intention, and we have been very planful and very deliberate in those efforts. Allowing members the time and space to do the work results in better outcomes and is also an essential part of, has been an essential part of our work. Transparency, which is a key concept of a key principle of the trauma-informed framework, is also part of honoring the process as we have described going forward. And effective communication is absolutely essential. We fully recognize that changing culture is a journey, and it is one that we take very seriously. And we also recognize that it is it's a journey that we are started, that we are on, and that we remain committed to.
I think that's our last slide. We're happy to take questions. We know that the Oversight Committee co-chairs will be presenting as well, and I'm sure that they will provide significant information about our process.
Mr. Zika?
Yeah, thank you. Good report. There's a lot of detail here. It's complicated. You had to do a certain amount of foundational work to even get started. The communication plan you've listed, the transparency, I mean, that's really hard in an organization like OHSU. How do you think it's going? I mean, do you guys get feedback? I mean, I know you have your committees and your meetings, and you probably put out communication materials. What are you hearing from the community? Do they, hey, we're finally working on it, we're going to do something different, or man, it's sure taken a long time? I mean, what's the feedback you're getting, and have you adjusted your communication plan because of that?
Well, I know that Dr. Moreland-Capuya and Mr. Alexander will have more to share about this. I would say that for the implementation committee that we have, it's hard when you're in the midst of it to appreciate how far you've come and how much you've accomplished. The 6-month report certainly helped us understand that and appreciate that. The implementation committee members do work with their stakeholders, and they're beyond the teams that are actually working on the SBARs to gather input and information for that. That process seems to be going well. And what we're really hearing is that people are feeling that this is a different approach than other efforts have undertaken here at OHSU.
Questions? Mr. Carlson?
On the consolidated data repository and centralized reporting system, how many months of data do we have in there, and how are we sharing that information?
So we have no months of data. We have data from our Ethics Point hotline that existed previously. We have separate reporting systems. So we have data in HR systems, we have data in AEO systems, we have data that goes to the schools. We are trying to gather it all together. Probably the amount of data we have and the date and timelines of it will differ in each of those, and that's part of the reason that we're trying to put together a whole system. Our intention is to have a report out, at least with the data that we know we have easily accessible on a yearly basis as we begin to roll this out.
Thank you.
Progress being made. Good to hear. We appreciate you guys being at the lead of all of this, and we look forward to hearing more as we move forward on the SBARs that have been put together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to the next part of the agenda with a report from the Oversight Committee, and they will be virtual. Mr. Michael Alexander and Dr. Alicia Moreland-Capuya.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Munfries. Thank you to everyone, and thank you, Alice and Dr. Bakewell-Sachs. I am Alicia Moreland-Capuya, one of the co-chairs for the Oversight Committee. And Mr. Alexander, if you are on, which I know you are, I'll extend the virtual mic to you to introduce yourself before we hop into our presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Moreland-Capuya. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hopefully you can see me.
We can.
Fantastic. For Chair Monfils, Dr. Jacobs, and the board, thank you for having us back. The Oversight Committee will follow many of the same patterns of information sharing that our colleagues in the Implementation Committee just presented to you. The August report that you received on our work for the first 6 months was titled Culture of Change at OSHU. And it began with a quote that what we do here can change everything about tomorrow. I would say that the work of the committee has been diligent in reframing that statement to indicate that what we do here will change how we look at tomorrow. Our presentation will lay out the path of the committee that we've charted over the last 6 months and offer some insights as to what has gone well and also some related challenges. And with that, I would like to move on to the next slide and invite my distinguished co-chair colleague to lead us through presentation on findings in 5 key areas of focus. Next slide.
Awesome. I'm not going to read through every single detail, but if you know anything about Mr. Alexander and I, we like a lot of detail. We don't want to overwhelm you today. So I want to give us, when we last gathered together, I think a few months back, the board had a question, and Mr. Alexander, I'm going to ask if you could kindly mute yourself. The board asked.
I am unmuted. That's not coming from me.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so the board posed a question, and the question was, well, what do you all think about the process, and what is being thought about the process? And so we want to answer that question. We didn't want to simply come to you with our impressions. We wanted you to have the impressions of the 36-member oversight committee. And so I'm going to go through the 5 key areas that we actually sent out a survey to pose the question of what folks felt about, and we wanted it to be written. We wanted to hear from them very honestly, because it was also going to drive the change that we were going to endeavor together to ensure that this process remains strong. So in that, work product in this case is just as important as the process. And so we ask about these things to our 36 members, oversight committee board members. We ask about the meeting structure. Currently, we were meeting for about 90 minutes once a month to engage together, to understand. We've been tasked with monitoring, reviewing, and offering input to the implementation committee, again, working in a very collegial, bi-directional capacity. But our real goal and charge is to ensure that every single member, which represents a stakeholder group, is able to solicit wide and deep feedback, so that the feedback that we get on the proposals that are being submitted by the implementation committee that represents the 44 recommendations that have to be fulfilled as outlined by the Covington report, that we are getting as many voices, eyes, thoughts, revisions, historical data as possible, because we believe it's a rich product. So in that, we said, okay, we've got this process set up where we are engaging bidirectionally with the implementation committee through the SBAR process and through our process. What does it look like? So meeting structure. We asked them specifically about how are our meetings going? And in general, and it is what's working and what can be improved. In general, folks appreciated the structure of our meetings. We have a community standards agreement. We do a mindfulness exercise. And then we ask folks to adhere to those agreements, that everyone gets to come as they are, with the expectation that we use whatever we come with to move us forward. So in general, folks appreciated that. They appreciated the employment of trauma-informed practices. One of the things that they mentioned in terms of meeting structure is they wanted more protected time. What I am proud to report is that we acted directly on that recommendation, and Dr. Jacobs, in strong leadership, penned a letter essentially to managers thanking them, but also asking for additional time, that we protect this time because their voices and leadership is important. We also ask about meeting logistics, what's working. Folks generally said that the process is working well. We put quotes in here for you to read. I'll just read one. One member said, I seriously really like the focused attention and structure of time and frequency. We try to be laser beam focused. When we asked what could be improved, folks really wanted more time in session to do the work. And there was a request to extend the meeting time to go from 90 minutes to 120 minutes, or to add an additional day. What we landed on by consensus was extending the meeting by an additional half hour. In terms of the charter, which we worked very hard on to co-construct, and we allowed significant feedback, folks felt like that process was very fair. They also felt like we provided a safe environment for them to speak honestly about what needed to be adjusted, and that we listened. What they thought could be improved was the clarity of timeline, right? What they wanted to ensure that it was clear that the oversight committee would be in existence for the duration, for the length of time that the implementation committee would also be in existence. So we reconciled that. Next slide, please. We also ask very much about the co-chair facilitation. It was important for us to learn from folks at the 6-month evaluation, built in intentional by charter, that we wanted to know, is it going as well as you thought? Do you feel like you're getting what you need in order to do this job well, or to fulfill this charge and charter well? What folks said that they appreciated was that they appreciated that Mr. Alexander and I work well together. They appreciated the safe environment in which we've constructed and created, where everyone does really have a voice and we're leaning in. And folks really appreciated the trauma-informed training and focus when they talk in general. So they appreciated our leadership. Words like safety, reflective space, all of those things, the way that we capture meeting notes, those things were generally well received. What they thought could be improved is that they wanted a little bit more time in reimagining how we engage with the implementation committee in general. And so we are still working through that. But overall, good. And there's no tension, meaning that the oversight members wanted to have more time with implementation committee members, but we are working through that and explaining why the process needs to work the way it is. But in general, pretty good. Lastly, we ask about membership. The membership for the Oversight Committee is wide. We have 36 members that represent multiple employee resource groups, multiple departments, multiple disciplines. And what folks felt like was the diversity of the membership was appropriate, that it was a new way of doing things that felt good to them, and overall felt good about membership, the composition of members. And the only other thing that came up was, again, this issue of protected time and making sure that we emphasize that, and we believe that we've addressed that. Next slide, please. Mr. Alexander, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Molen-Kapur. As you see, we have covered a broad span of concerns and used the wisdom of the group to chart our path going forward. But there were areas of concern that were raised, and I think that question was asked just in terms of what are you seeing or what are you feeling? Well, first things, the process towards change has a tension in terms of pace, how quickly we're going to see discernible change. And many of the members of the committee share the dual role of being stakeholder representatives, but also individuals whose lived experience has taken them into areas where there have been a failing or an absence or a shortcoming in terms of how the institution has responded to them or other members of the OHSU community. And I think there is a concern that this change has to happen at a pace that is discernible and impactful. And that is a TBD in many instances. And so I think there's a concern that we continue to track and move forward, but that it happens in a way and in places where it impacts those who are disadvantaged the most. The second, harm continues to happen.
Mr. Alexander,
I'm sorry,
just
please.
real quick. Sorry, I do want to try to make this a little bit interactive if any other board members. But when we talk about pace, I would ask you to go back to the committee members and see what they would recommend we do differently with regard to pace, because we know the work is hard. We know we want to take into account a lot of inputs as we do it, so it needs to be, let's say, deliberate. But I hear the concern, so it would be really great for the implementation committee to hear what could be done differently, and then come back to the board with how we've addressed that concern.
Thank you, Chair Moncrief. And I think you will find that the 4 co-chairs across the 2 committees share that perspective. One of the insights that we've shared with the committee is a proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go well, go together. And we understand that sometimes there's going to be a trade-off between process and pace. But I want to make sure that we communicate the heightened expectation that comes with this work. And quite frankly, the desire on the part of the committee to move into a space that they believe the university and its leadership aspires to. So there's a tension, but I don't think that it's lost that this work does take time.
Okay.
The other point, and thank you, I mean, the point was well taken. The other point that I would say is that in some instances, we're working to dismantle trauma discerning or trauma inducing practices and policies. And while that work is going on, many of the operations departments, programs continue to work, and in some instances, there are missed opportunities to address some of the activities that can actually continue to generate harm. And, you know, we're sort of transforming, we're building, we're changing, but at the same time, there is a carryover residual of, at times, business as usual. And collateral damage of that can often be the perpetuation of things that we're clearly and aggressively looking to change going forward. We have to sort of keep our eyes balanced on both. You know, we're driving a vehicle, we're looking at the path that we want to navigate, but we've got to be equally concerned with what we're seeing in the rearview mirror as well. And there have been times that we've had to come back and engage leadership at trying to make sure that we can correct those things that still are having these unintended or undesirable outcomes. So we're doing our very best to create a path to the future, but understanding that we have not exactly brought to an end some of the things that are raising concern. And
So
then
I
the
think
last, I'm sorry, go
That's
right
an
ahead.
interesting. It's an interesting point as I jump in after each one, I guess, because the leadership, it's been very clear it's zero tolerance, and so it's concerning to hear that harm continues to happen amid change. Not that I am naive to think it would stop immediately, but I would implore the leadership, Dr. Jacobs and team, to heed this point and redefine or double down on the message that it's going to be zero tolerance for that type of behavior. So just I don't want to jump through that point without making that comment.
Chair Monfries, a point of clarification as well. We wanted to make this point more generalizably, but there was a situation where it was a sort of a systems technical matter and issue that then triggered harm. So I want to make that clear that there wasn't a particular incident, that we're working on structural change, and we're at a point where the structure hadn't changed quick enough, and that structural change hadn't translated into the kind of cultural change that really is going to be mandated. So I just want to be clear, to the extent that I can, that this was a structural systemic, a systems issue that had not changed, that is in the process, and we were able to give that feedback, and immediately it was acted on. So I just wanted to offer that.
No, thank you for that clarification, and I'll clarify as well. I don't think that there's a disconnect between the board and the leadership team about the desire for change. So I don't want people to feel like I'm making a comment because the leadership doesn't get it. I know that they're committed to it. So I want the community to know that from a leadership position, this board and this leadership team is committed to change. So it is going to be zero tolerance, and please report when we have challenges, and whether it be system or incident, we need to get after it because we don't want this to persist. So thank you.
And Chair Monfries, thank you very much. Actually, I'm going to close because the point that Dr. Marlon Kapoor just raised really spoke to the need to look at the complexities associated with some of the technical challenges that we're facing. And the issue that surfaced really had to do with the unclarity around reporting structure and accountability, where things go. And it was not a failing of leadership as much as a process point that we know we're going to need to address through a technical solution. So I thank you. And I apologize for sort of rushing through this. I am so compliant when someone says you have 10 minutes. I try my best to do that because I also want to make sure that Dr. Marlon Kapoor has the opportunity to close us out. And we have another couple of slides. Dr. Marlon Kapoor, let me turn the mic back over to you.
Yeah, we'll be brief. If we can move to the next slide judiciously, please, that'd be great. I simply wanted to, we've already kind of addressed this, and I would encourage the public and everyone to kind of go back through. This simply is to sort of just provide greater context. Our colleagues from the implementation committee has already reported on this, but currently it's not just about how fast we go, but it really is about triaging and making sure that the most urgent things are being managed appropriately and thoughtfully. So there are 31 SBARs have been identified to address about 44 recommendations. We currently have 10 of those SBARs underway. The reviews are underway in various stages. And the only thing I wanted to just say in addition to that is that as we do this work, what we recognize is that as we're reviewing it, that there are some emotional triggers that we can't just sort of move past and we don't ignore. That a part of our role is also to create psychological safety, to ensure that we're not ignoring the things that are coming up. And so we are managing and holding space for quite a bit. So I will just say that in this idea that change is really not an event, it is indeed a process. Next slide and final slide. We've talked about these trauma-informed principles in your packets. We gave a bit more explanation because we thought it was important to think about not just these principles sort of in isolation, but to think about it as it applies to contextually to the work that we are doing together, and also how it applies to trauma-informed organizations and trauma-informed leadership. So, you know, we're working really towards helping people and the organization heal. And it requires all of these things: safety, which we really believe that we are paying close attention to and being intentional in highlighting that; empowerment, voice and choice; peer supports, transparency and trustworthiness; collaboration. It is honoring collective expertise and also effectively widening the bench. And these, even more important, the cultural, historical, and gender considerations. So we want you to know that a trauma-informed lens is being applied at every stage of this process, and really should be applied at every level of leadership. So there are more details in your packet. We will end there. And the last slide is really, we'll take any questions that you might have, any points of clarifications, reservations, or challenges. And we thank you for this time to engage with you.
Thank you. Ms. Byer?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the time and stamina, I think, that has been exhibited by both committees. This is hard work, and plow your way through policies and reporting relationships and all kinds of stuff. I know how hard that is. So I really wanted to acknowledge that and thank you all for that. My question is really around, when we set you off, or the university set you off to do this, it was very focused on the recommendations of the Covington report out. 44 recommendations, I think I saw in the materials. And it's very targeted work, which was necessary, and it looks like you're making great progress on that. My question is really, in the course of that sort of laser focus on those 44 recommendations, has anything else, are you finding along the way that there are other things that come to mind that needed to be added to the work of the group? You know, we'd like to think that Covington was, you know, perfect in coming up with their 44 recommendations, but I'm guessing that you know the institution better than they, and that there might be some things that you felt either were missing or maybe missed the mark. So that could be a question for either our current panelists or for our prior panelists.
Dr. Bakewell-Sacks and Alice, would you like to start, or?
They think we should be working on, or certainly that the university should be working on. I think we have committed to making sure that we have met the recommendations of the Covington report as our first task, and an important task. We certainly at the implementation committee are keeping track of comments that we receive that are sort of outside of that, to ensure that we can bring them forward at the end of our work or during our work to either Dr. Jacobs or the board as necessary. So certainly keeping track of that, but really focusing on the Covington recommendations at the moment, in large part because the work is big, and we know will be transformational and foundational if we can get it done. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Mullen-Kapuya.
Or I just want to make sure, because I had just finished talking, it's sort of like double dutch, you know, you kind of wait to get in there, but I appreciate that. I will say, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, and will say that this has certainly been a consistent theme that has come up this for folks saying, well, can we also make sure that we focus on this? And I do think that it is important, to be laser beam focused and foundationally to move towards these recommendations, but also to bear in mind that, you know, I go through and make it an exercise of going back to reread the report twice per month, just to ensure that we are staying focused and not losing sight. And that is that we had over 700 plus OHSU members offer feedback that actually drove the Covington recommendations. So these are not independent of reports and data that OHSU had, right, about the things that needed to change. And it is also, they're also not independent of 700 voices of our community members and staff and faculty and friends and colleagues at OHSU. So to completely ignore the 44, which I know that is not the question, I'm sort of speaking out loud here, that it is important to focus on that fact, that these are also based on 700 members' voices and their experiences. And so to prioritize that, this idea of triage becomes so very important. And then what's the work for now, right now? What's the immediate thing to stop the bleeding? And then what's the maintenance? Then what's the decision tree sort of shortly thereafter? And forgive me for lack of a better reference, but that's what comes to mind for me, that there is work that has to be done to stop the hemorrhaging. And then we move down another decision tree, whether to take someone to surgery or to CT. So I do believe that it becomes exceptionally important to stop the bleeding, and working to make sure that we have completed the task on these 44 recommendations has to be the priority.
Well, it was a great question, and I appreciate the answers to stay focused on the report that we have. I think I would point back to your point number 3 with regard to the charter. So what I would say on number 3 is maybe the oversight committee members think about what oversight looks like after we address the 44 recommendations. It might not be that the committee continue, but we would love to get some input with regard to what OHSU can do to continue its oversight and continue this process and evolution. Thank you for that, Ruth. Any other questions? Well, thank you for that report. Again, work continues, and we appreciate your efforts and the committee's efforts to continue to improve the culture and workplace here. So thank you for that.
We thank you for the time today.
Yes, thank you kindly. Be well. Thank you.
Take care.